When I was a kid, I was afraid of the dark. Anybody with me? Don't judge. Anybody else afraid of the dark when you were a kid? Why were we afraid of the dark? Because monsters were there in the dark, right? You're afraid of what you can't see. There were monsters. I remember when I was a kid, I would go up to my bed, if all the lights were out in my room and in the hallway, I would go up to the side of my bed, but leave a few feet and then kind of like hop in because the monsters would grab your feet. You couldn't get too close underneath the bed. Monsters also lived in the closets, of course. Who had monsters in their closets? Right, yeah. Well, it's normal as kids to be afraid of the dark, afraid of monsters. It's normal. But we grow out of fear, right? As you get older, you leave fear behind, right? Wrong? No. Your fears change. Maybe you're not afraid of monsters under the bed or in your closet, but fear hasn't left you. It fuels a lot of the decisions you make, a lot of the mistakes you make. Relational difficulties, bad decisions financially or relationally. It leads to some of your health problems, maybe. It leads to all sorts of ruin and destruction and trouble and stress in your life. See, we're all fighting a different battle besides all the other battles that we can see that we feel like we're fighting. We're fighting the battle with the fear monster. But my question is, are you winning? Let's fight the fear monster together, okay? Let's do some battle today. We're going to go after this thing. We're going to fight the fear monster. And our guide along the way, he fought some fear monsters of his own. We're going to look at the life of Saul. So you can find 1 Samuel chapter 9, if your Bibles. It'll be up here as well. This was a fearful time in the land of Israel. They lived in this kind of major highway in the Palestine area, and there were nations coming and going all the time. They lived with surrounding nations around them, and these nations were always pillaging them. Their flocks weren't safe, their fields weren't safe, their families weren't safe. The Israelites were terrified. They were completely vulnerable. So they rally around this idea of nationalizing. Say, we want a king. In 1 Samuel 8:20, they say, we want a king who will lead us and who will fight our battles. That's the solution. That's the answer. So they rally around this idea. And then one day, they find their man. And the author of 1 Samuel introduces us to the man named Saul. 1 Samuel 9, verse 1 starts out, it introduces us to his family first. He's a man of standing, Saul's dad. His name was Kish. Saul's dad's name was Kish. Man of standing means a man of valor, a man of might and wealth and power. This was a significant man, a significant family. And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Saul, he's an impressive young man, without equal among the Israelites. He's even a head taller than everyone. I can identify. Usually my head sticks out in a crowd. The author wants us to know right away, this is the first appearance of Saul in the Old Testament, in the Bible. The author wants us to know this is Saul. He's a significant man. Let's call him Significant Saul. But he's got some trouble with his significance. He likes to wander off. Verse 3 says, Saul's family got in a little bit of bind. They lost the family car, a.k.a. donkeys. Okay, donkeys were an essential tool and resource in households then. They would carry your stuff, you could ride on their backs and travel. And if you had a lot of donkeys, you had a lot of wealth, a lot of significance. We know the family was significant. They had a lot of donkeys. But the donkeys ran off. The author wants us to see two things right away. Significant Saul. He's a man of significance. But he doesn't have a handle on his significance. It wanders off, and he's not all that motivated to go after it. That's what the rest of the story in chapter 9 tells us. So Saul's dad says, hey, go find the donkeys. Saul gets a servant, they go. A few days into the journey, Saul's ready to give up. He's like, you know what, forget the donkeys. My dad's probably worried about us. Let's go home. And the servant says, no, Saul, we can find these things. In fact, there's a man nearby named Samuel who hears from God. Maybe he'll help us find the donkeys. Saul's like, oh, we can't afford it. I can't afford any counsel like that. I don't have any money. And the servant's like, I got you today. He bails him out. They go see Samuel. But did you catch that Saul wasn't motivated to go after his wandering significance? See, what's happening with Saul, we know he's a significant man. His significant family, he's impressive. For the rest of his life, we'll watch this morning, his significance is going to increase, okay? That's Saul's life. He starts significant. There we go. For the rest of his life, his significance will be climbing. But does he go with it? Well, the fear monster attacks. Saul goes, he finds Samuel, and Samuel says, hey, the donkeys aren't wandering anymore. They're found, and Israel has found you, Saul. You're the man. You're going to be the leader that rescues us from all the troubles we're having with all these nations. But the fear monster attacks. And look what Saul says. Me? No, you don't want me. My family's not important. My tribe's not important. You must be mistaken. I'm not significant. Saul stays right down here. He doesn't move to the level of significance he's just been given. And then Samuel ups the ante a little bit. Samuel throws a banquet for Saul, has 30 people there. He gives Saul the seat of honor. He gives him the choice piece of meat. He says, this guy, he's the man. His significance is rising. And then he anoints Saul with oil. This was the official symbol and act of designating the next leader. Saul's significance is rising. Does he go with it? No, the fear monster attacks again. Saul goes home, bumps into his uncle, and his uncle says, hey, I heard you lost some donkeys. Did you get them? Yeah, we got them. Samuel helped us. Samuel, you talked to Samuel? What did Samuel say? This man hears from God. And Saul told him about the donkeys, but he didn't tell him about the king thing. He doesn't rise to his rising significance. He stays right down here. Samuel ups the ante a little bit more. Now, he invites the whole country. All the people of Israel come, they gather. It's election day. Saul knew, or Samuel knew that he was the king designee, but the people didn't know. And so they were going to go through this spiritual process of selecting the leader for all the people to know. And they go through. The tribe of Benjamin's picked. This is the moment they've been waiting for. A rescuer. Today. We came today with no king. We're going to leave with a king. Who's it going to be? Then Saul's family. Kish is chosen. And then Saul is chosen. And they're like, Saul, where's Saul? Usually we can see him. But they can't see Saul's head sticking out of the crowd. Why not? Because the fear monster attacked. And he's hiding. Check out the next verse. There he was, hiding with the bags. God, where's your king? Oh, he's hiding. The fear monster attacked again. Again, Saul's significance rises. Now the whole nation knows who the man is, who the king is supposed to be. But Saul's down here. He has a fear of significance. Do you have a fear of significance? God's given you a place to live, a family to live with, a school to go to, a job to have. For your life, you've been rising in significance. I'm not talking about some arrogant thing. I'm saying your life is important. You're a meaningful person, a person of significance. Have you risen to the level of responsibility and calling and appointment that you have? Or have you rejected it, afraid of what that means? I'll talk to the guys, my brothers. You're in your family. You're in your household. You're in your job for a reason. Do you shirk responsibility? Sure, you have a position and you have a significant level in whatever field or whatever domain you're in, but are you there mentally? Have you updated your view of yourself? Or do you escape to some fantasy world? It could be fantasy football. It could be some kind of sinful fantasy. Do you reject the responsibility that you have been given because you're afraid of that significance and what it means? Ladies, maybe in your head, this tape has been playing for your whole life. It started when you were a kid. Somebody said something to you. It was a lie. It wasn't true. Maybe it had a grain of truth, but it landed and it stunted your growth. And so now when a problem especially comes into your life and in your way, you revert back to that 7-year-old, that 12-year-old, that 16-year-old. You haven't updated your view of yourself. You're here. Your kids, your family, your friends are looking to you here, but in your head, you are down here. You're afraid of the significance that's been given to you. And teens, young people, you're not children anymore. You're adulting, as they say, right? Responsibilities are increasing. The workload, the burden, you feel the pressure. And we're not trying to throw you way out here yet, but your level of significance in life is rising. Don't just keep playing games. Don't just tune out. It's so easy to tune out and play games and pour yourself into a world that's not quite real. Embrace where God is bringing you right now, today. Update your view of yourself. Saul didn't do it because fear attacks your view of yourself. It makes you stay right down here for the rest of your life, maybe. Fear is going to attack your view of yourself. Embrace who you are. Let's see how Saul does it, how he goes into the next step of his life. Now he's king, and he's doing what kings do. He's fighting battles. 1 Samuel 17. Some of you know this story well from your childhood, maybe. I mean, the scene is just beautiful. It's like a perfect battle scene. The Israelites are on one side of a valley, the Philistines are on the other side of a valley, and the battlefield is in the middle. And every day for 40 days, it tells us, this dude named Goliath stands and shouts across the valley, "Hey, Israel, send a man to fight me. If he wins, we'll serve you. If I win, then you'll serve us." And he taunts them. He says, "You people, you follow Saul, well, send a man out." Now, did you catch how tall Goliath was? Over 9 feet tall. He's a man of significance, probably the most significant warrior in the Philistine army, if he's making this threat. And he's taking jabs at Saul. Saul's the one who should be out there fighting. He's the king, he's the leader. Remember 1 Samuel 8:20 said, we want a king to lead us and to fight our battles. Saul's there. He's the tallest dude in the Israelites' camp. He's the best armed and the best armored. He's the leader. Why isn't he fighting Goliath? Because fear attacks your view of others too. To Saul, Goliath was way bigger. He might as well have been 100 feet tall. And Saul was down here, afraid of his own significance. Goliath was too big, Saul was too small. Fear attacks your view of others. God sends a helper. You can find the next verse in verse 33. God sends a little dude, a little guy named David. Saul was afraid, by the way. When they went looking for Saul to fight, he was still hiding with his soldiers. But God provides a rescuer named David, a kid. He was just a boy. He had 7 older brothers. Some of them were in the army. But David was just an errand boy. He would bring him cheese and crackers. He would watch the sheep in his part-time. He was a boy. But he was a boy who trusted God, who showed up ready to do some battle. He brings cheese and cracker to his brothers one day, and he hears this Goliath guy taunting the Israelites. And he's like, who's this chump? Threatening my God and threatening my brothers? What's going on? I'll take him on. So he goes to Saul and says, I'll fight this guy. Who's this thug? And Saul says, no. Remember, Saul can't see. Fear has attacked his view of others. He sees Goliath is too big, Saul's too small, and now he sees David, who is small, as even smaller. He says, David, you can't do it. You can't pull that off. It reminds me, as we face our problems in life, they often get way bigger than they really are. And I'm not discounting the problems that you have. If they're health problems, relational, financial, some of you, your lives are, they feel like they're falling apart, and they're falling apart. I'm not discounting or dismissing your problems. But when fear ramps up its game, when the fear monster attacks, your problems get way bigger, right? It's like you're looking at them through binoculars. Even though they're out there, through binoculars, it's like there's terrifying detail, and they're humongous. They're right in front of your face. It reminds me of a dog I had when I was a kid. It's just this disproportionate view that fear makes us see through. She was a German Shepherd. Her name was Skittle, and she was afraid of it. We might as well call her skittish. I mean, she was afraid of everything. If you were outside walking with her and something fell or a deer jumped out, she was terrified. She wouldn't go in that spot anymore. One day, towards the end of her life, she stopped going in the kitchen. She wouldn't go in the kitchen. Like, you try to pull her, and she'd scrape on the wood floor. She didn't want to go in the kitchen, out of the blue. What's wrong with the kitchen? This is where we kept her at night. This is where her food, water was. She lived in the kitchen. And she wouldn't go in the kitchen anymore. Well, after her insane life came to an end, sadly, my parents replaced the dishwasher and found evidence of mice, some droppings and seeds and stuff under the dishwasher. And this is probably what happened. Skittle was there, sleeping one night, and she heard the little of mice, and she was terrified. A German Shepherd was terrified of a mouse that she might not have even seen. It's insane, right? But that's what fear does. Fear taps into the irrational parts of your circumstances. It just totally flips things on their head. You don't see yourself well or rightly. You don't see others rightly, including God. In this whole battle with Goliath, or threat of battle, we don't see Saul seeking God. David does. Saul, no. God's too small for my problem. Wow. Fight the fear monster, folks. So far, Saul's losing the battle. Now, the fear monster doesn't play fair, and it doesn't play rationally. Because all up through Saul's life, all up to this point with the whole Goliath thing, Saul was afraid of his significance, right? You could see that. Now the fear monster switches tactics. Saul's going to become afraid of his insignificance. Let's see how this works. Okay, 1 Samuel 18. Now David is Saul's right-hand man. I mean, he's doing everything well. Wherever he goes, whatever he does, he succeeds. If he's in battle, he wins. He's actually Saul's personal musician therapist, okay? He becomes Saul's son-in-law. The man is getting, he's a loyal servant to Saul. The people see this, though. The people see how Saul wasn't stepping up and how David is. And they start to literally sing David's praises. They had this little ditty they would sing in the streets. Saul has slain his thousands, but David is tens of thousands. And this galled Saul. They've credited David with tens of thousands and me with only thousands? Why, he's going to get the whole kingdom. He's going to steal my significance. And through jealousy, he became afraid of David. Because the Lord was with David, but not with Saul. Some of you wrestle with jealousy. You'd confess, yeah, I get jealous. I look at what other people have, who they are, what they're doing, at their significance, and I get jealous. Friends, jealousy is not your first issue. Jealousy rides on the back of the fear monster. Fear is your issue. Tackle that, and you'll find jealousy is gone. For Saul, he had so many people that trusted him, that looked to him. He was Israel's leader, the first one. Like, they hadn't been jaded by bad examples of leadership in the royal realm before. He was their first one. He was their pride and joy. They had a king. Thank you, Jesus, or thank you, God. We have a king, they would say. So he had the hopes and the support of his people, but he didn't rise to that significance. And because of that, he let everything go. Everything was destroyed because of fear. The relationships. His son, he didn't trust his son. He didn't trust David, who was a great guy, who was trying to support him and work for him. Saul lost trust in even people, even the prophets. There was this whole village of prophets one time, and Saul had them all killed because he was afraid that they weren't going to be loyal to him, that they were going to somehow side with David and they were going to steal his significance. He lost trust in everything. Everything he had was crumbling because of fear. So what does a fearful person do? Remember, fear is irrational. It switches. He's afraid of significance, now he's afraid of insignificance. What do you do when you're frightened? Well, you reach for your security blanket. Who had a security blanket when they were a kid? Yeah, teddy bear, a blankie, maybe it was a pacifier. Saul, it's okay for kids to have security blankets, but we older people don't have security blankets, right? Saul did. 5 times in the life of Saul, after the whole Goliath thing, we see Saul, and the text actually says, with spear in hand. Check this out. 2 times in 18 and in 19, Saul is sitting in his courtroom, whatever, on his throne room, and David's there playing the harp, pacifying Saul, and Saul's just gripping. He's just holding as tightly as he can to a symbol of his significance. Right? A spear can be a defensive tool. If somebody threatens you, you can jab them and keep them away. It can be an offensive tool. You see something that's a threat, you can throw it that way, right? Defense or offensive. Saul is clinging to his significance, terrified of losing it. David's there playing, and then something triggers. The fear monster attacks. Saul, afraid that he's going to lose his significance, throws it at David 2 times at 2 different events. He attacks David because the spear was in his hand, his security blanket. The 3rd time in chapter 20, Saul actually throws his spear at Jonathan, his own son, because the fear monster had its talons in his life. The 4th time we see Saul sitting under this tree on top of a hill, and his loyal servants are around him. And Saul's complaining. You guys don't pity me. David's going to steal my kingdom and my significance, and nobody cares. Don't you feel sorry for me? And it says he's holding onto his spear this whole time. And then, like any good security blanket, it's at his side when he's asleep. We find Saul in chapter 26 sleeping with his spear at his side, like a good blankie. You can hold on to security blankets, and they give you the illusion of fearlessness. They give you the illusion of control, right? But you're not in control, and you're still terrified. Put down your security blanket. Instead, reach for the hand that is extended to you from God, saying, I can do this. Trust me. I know what I've been giving you. It's not too much for me. Would you rise to the level of the significance I've given you? Would you hold on to me? Let go of the security blankets. Fear will destroy everything in your life. What's your security blanket? You probably don't show up to work with a blankie anymore, but you show up with your wallet, you check your 401k balance, your bank accounts. Maybe you escape and you're holding on to your security blanket of your family, the people that you live in your home with, your friends. Maybe it's your grades. Maybe it's how many goals or points you scored. Maybe it's public opinion of you. You're always checking through social media. What do people think? What do people think? What do people? You're afraid of your insignificance. You're afraid of losing significance. I don't know what your fear is, but I'm positive if you have a fear, then you've got a security blanket. It's time to let it go, guys. You can't hold on to that and fight the fear monster. He's got you fooled, and he's going to take you out. He took out Saul. At the end of his life, the last chapter of 1 Samuel 31, Saul's in battle with the Philistines again. They overrun the Israelites. They wound Saul, and he retreats. He falls back. And it says because he was afraid of what the Philistines would do to him, he killed himself. Another victim of the fear monster. Don't be next. The fear monster is going after you. It's hiding under your bed. Will you fight him today? How do you do that? Love. That's what a man who knew and walked with Jesus. He lived with Jesus, he saw Jesus die, and then he saw Jesus rise again from the dead 3 days after that. This man named John wrote a letter one time to an early church. And he said, guys, I know you're afraid, but don't be, because you've been given perfect love. There's no fear in that kind of love. That kind of love drives out fear. You don't have to be afraid because you're well loved. You're perfectly loved. The 1940s were a frightening time in Europe, in the whole world. There was a woman named Corrie ten Boom who lived in Amsterdam, and her family decided to house and to harbor the refugees, especially Jewish people or any other undesirables that the Nazis deemed unworthy of life. And the Corrie ten Boom family housed and saved over 800 families, over 800 people, I should say, through that war, until one day Corrie's fears were realized. See, Corrie was a fearful woman. She thought every day the Nazis are going to find us. They're going to storm the house, they're going to break in, they're going to capture me, or they're going to quarantine me and interrogate me, and maybe I'll say something wrong. Corrie was afraid of what would happen to the people that they helped and then sent on to the next house. Lived in constant fear. And then one day the Nazis came in, arrested her and her family, and sent them to concentration camps. Corrie and her sister Betsy, in their 50s, ended up in a concentration camp called Ravensbrück, not too far outside of Berlin. By the miraculous hand of God, Betsy smuggled in a Bible. And Corey recalls in one of her books how every night they would gather around to hear Betsy reading the Bible. Remember, Corey was still terrified. But this is what she writes. As for us, from morning until lights out, whenever we were not in ranks for roll call, our Bible was the center of an ever-widening circle of help and hope. Like waifs clustered around a blazing fire, we gathered about it, holding out our hearts to its warmth and light. The blacker the night around us grew, the brighter and truer and more beautiful burned the Word of God. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or nakedness or danger or sword? Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us, Betsy would read. I would look about us as Betsy read, watching the light leap from face to face. More than conquerors. It was not a wish, it was a fact. We knew it. We experienced it minute by minute. Poor, hated, hungry. We are more than conquerors. Not we shall be, we are. Corey finishes. She says, life in Ravensbrück took place on two separate levels, mutually impossible. One, the observable. The external life grew every day more horrible. The other, the life we lived with God. It grew daily better, truth upon truth, glory upon glory. In the middle of a Nazi death camp, the fear monster was defeated by love. I don't know what your fears are. I'm pretty sure you have some. And if you have fear, you've got security blankets. Friends, let them go. God has not called you to live in fear. He hasn't given you a spirit of fear. He calls you to be sons and daughters, children of the King of the universe. Will you meet him there? Will you hold on to him instead of your fear? I'd ask you to close your eyes. From the moment I mentioned fear, you started thinking about your fears. You don't have to probe. They're right there. The fear monster is bigger than ever, right there. If you're tired of fighting and losing, I'd invite you to raise your hand to say, God, I'm trusting in you now. I've been losing this battle to fear, but no more. Today I'm taking your hand, your strong enough hand, and I'm going to do battle your way. If you'd like to receive a fresh outpouring of God's love to drive out fear in your life, I'd ask you to raise your hand. I want to pray for you. Father, you're in this room. You know every single person who's sitting here. You know every issue they're facing, every fear that terrifies them, every worry on their heart. None of it has escaped your view. You know all things, and you do all things well. So Jesus, in your incredible love and power, pour out your love into their hearts now. Meet them in their place of fear and bring them to a place of trust in you instead. Loosen their grip on what they hold to with security so that you can take their hand, so that they can take your hand. Jesus, do it. Our lives depend on it. Amen.